haven't worked in like that corporate role before. Not that this is corporate by any means. We're blasting music and we're like talking.
Yeah.
Like come on, this is
You're like, I'm making it fun compared to what you had to go through, I'm sure, to get to where you are now, considering you had to like work a whole other career just to start your business. So
yeah,
it's like
I don't think they have that like background. Like I come from
yeah.
a where like everyone was like ex Goldman, and so I wrote a 3-page paper once because I called someone the wrong name about how I'd never make an error again. So like I'm like, wake up.
Yeah.
Kara, I wonder if like I'm sure you have lots of things that you want to say, but I'm wondering if like this is something that you ask in the like what are the key questions in an interview that like you can filter out the people with that kind of work ethic, because I like totally know what you guys are going through, and I'm like, is there a magic question or something?
That's good because I have 2 interviews over the next 48 hours.
Yeah, that's a good question.
Okay, great. My first rule of interviewing is I want to scare someone. If I want to make the job sound horrible. And part of the reason why I'm saying scare someone is because all of us have had experiences where our job has sucked. It's all made us better people. It's all allowed us to do what we're doing today. And because there's like a rebound effect of like, we've had a really shitty job. So then we try to make things really fun instead of focusing on the work. So there's no way that anybody in Thrive is ever going to be an asshole boss. Like it's pretty much impossible. None of you are even like close on the scale of being assholes, right? So we might think we're a 10, but us as an asshole is like a 2, right? So we overcompensate because we don't want to be that bad boss. We don't want to have that horrible work environment. And we under discuss, this is going to suck. The hours are going to be long. I have high expectations. Like, this is no joke. I'm going to need you to do things you don't want to do. Like, we don't talk that language, right? If you go to a Goldman Sachs interview, do they care if you want to be there? No. And now, do we need to be Goldman Sachs? Of course not. Of course not. But we also, the first step is we need to be real about what our expectations actually are. My expectations are that if it's an 8-hour day, we're going to do it smiling. My expectations are that when we have an opportunity, which is usually what causes us to work like crazy people, opportunities are great. So we have an opportunity, we're all going to cheer and we're going to be like, I cannot wait to work 12 hours to make this happen, right? Like we don't say what we really want people to be doing at work. We talk about, we think that the jobs we have to offer, that we're desperate for people, so we'll make it sound nice and awesome, when in reality, they should be excited to be here. And this kind of comes to what we talked about on Thursday, Mikkel, right? Because Mikkel brought up the whole conversation about through the NFL internships, and should they be free or paid? And everyone's saying like, pay people what they're worth. And that conversation opened up the fact that having the opportunity to work for anybody and to work for you guys is awesome. It does not need to be more awesome than the fact that I get to work for you and work and like learn from you. So the biggest part is like being basically interviewing people as if they were going to have your job versus the job that they might have. Because we all do the things. We're going to stay late. We're going to run from the meeting and pick up the stuff and drop it off and figure out the courier, go to UPS at like whatever time we have to in the morning to handle something. So we need to make sure that we're interviewing people so that they can replace us if they need to, versus being like, oh, I need a social media manager. It'd be really awesome if you could do this. And how about on Saturday? And sure, you don't want to work on Fridays, no big deal. That's what happens. So we can't, by me saying I want to scare people, if I'm scaring someone about the role and making it sound horrible, I know I've covered all those bases, and then we can talk about how it's awesome later. Like, so I have to remind myself, like, this is a serious job. I'm actually a total hard ass. I have high expectations. And it's very similar, like the whole dating conversation of like, we're courting our customers. We also need to court our employees, but more like we're going to marry them, not like we want them to like ask us out. So the version of me that Jesse knows versus, somebody I would meet at a bar, very different people, right? Not intentionally, but he knows I'm a total pain in the ass. I want my employees to know I'm going to be a pain in the ass, and here's where. Does that make sense? That, because to give you guys any, like, it may not be as concrete as you're looking for. We can go into concrete interview questions as well, but what surprises you about that, or is different than maybe how you've been approaching interviewing?
We actually caught that last week. So we were interviewing and I caught myself because I was like, yeah, it's really fun. And I was like, what the hell?
Yeah.
I was like, why am I telling them like their job is fun? Like, yeah, we have fun. So I like corrected myself and I was like, business first. Also, we listen to music, but like,
Yeah.
I don't know. So I like caught myself in this weird thing of like, I was trying to sell them the job and like convince them that they wanted to work here, which like, you're right, like expectations are not going to be met with that. We actually had some employees, which is really funny. One of them's here today because I needed more help, but it didn't work out working together because our expectations were you can come and go as you want, like it's more flexible, like whatever. And then we started putting in our real expectations and she's like, what the hell? Like this isn't what I signed up for. So yeah, it did cause issues. So I think
I feel like,
being real with them is really helpful.
yeah, I feel like I struggle with this a lot considering that my job looks so glamorous. Like everything is pretty and the pretty clothes, and I'm friends with my clients, and it's like this fun, like, and it can be really fun, but it's fun because the hard work behind the scenes happens. And the only way that we can have fun doing our jobs is when all that hard work gets done, like the music and, getting coffees for everyone and chatting and asking, how your boyfriend's doing. But it's like those relationships come with the hard work. And every time I do an interview with someone, I always talk about, I'm like, this is the least glamorous job. There's a lot of schlepping, and I still schlep. Like if I don't have an intern or an assistant with me to go to LA with 5 duffel bags, I have to do it myself. So it's like what Kara, like what you were saying, I feel like that is something that I do in interviews. Like the expectations are things that like I will expect someone to do if I can't do it. And I think we could all relate to this. It's been really hard with COVID because we also have to be like empathetic and compassionate to like the fact that we've been in a pandemic for a year. And it's like, I'm a freelancer. So like last week I took on every single job that I got and I was just like, I have to do it. And then we were on set from 6:45 a.m. call time to midnight on Thursday. And it was a long day. And then we had to be at work the next day on Friday because I had another shoot. And it's like, I can't say no to any of these things because I haven't had work in a year. And I feel it's really hard for interns and assistants and people that are younger who are watching the world like kind of go from what it was to what it is now. And so, it's like finding that empathy, but also like have that mentality of like, I'm a freelancer and I have to take on these jobs and work these weird hours and all of that. So, Kendra or Kara, I feel like if you had like, not for like now, like maybe like a guide, and I missed last Thursday, so you might have put it in there yet, and I haven't seen it, but like specific questions and types of things to like, if there was like a handbook or like a little guideline, I would love that because I totally feel like I do what you're saying, and I still like it's still something I really struggle with. And I see business going to like how Kendra's business is going. Like I feel like I'm about to get really, really busy. And I learned so much from you guys and what you guys are going through. And I'm like, okay, I gotta like, it's not a coincidence that I'm hearing this, Kendra, because I feel like I'm on that path to like what you're dealing with. So like
I will
not.
absolutely give you a list of questions that I ask, but the most powerful way to do an interview, I'll tell you the framework right now of like how to make up your own questions. So the first part of an interview that I usually do with somebody is I have a list of all the literal tasks that are done. And I start with the ones that suck, as I said, scaring people. So if you're going to join my team, like here's the reality of what this team looks like. Here's the ugly version of this team. And I've had the same issue as you, Britt, of working in glamorous, what looks like glamorous jobs and having to pop everyone's bubble as they're like in the interview process. Like, oh, we work for Puma and we travel the world and we get to make cool shoes and we work with these athletes and everything's a party. But that only happens 5% of the time. And sometimes you're at that party crying because you're stressed out and you don't want to be there and you'd rather be home taking a bath. Like that's real life.
Yeah.
So
I feel like that happens in every fashion job.
yes, yes, yes.
Everybody thinks it's much more glamorous than it actually is.
Yeah. So so have that conversation be the first thing you say. You're gonna, like exactly like you said to us, you think this job is glamorous. This is the hardest job I've ever had, but I love it. Like it's okay to say that, right? You can, and I love it. You should really say, not the buts. Always replace buts with ands. This is the hardest job I've ever had, and I love it, right? So you lay out the two pieces right away. Here's what's horrible about this job. List it out. Here's what I love about this job. And you can talk about when those things happen or when they don't happen. You can speak to your own past experiences, right? Of like, here's how I've been brought up through my career. Here's what I expect because of that. Here's what my work ethic is. And then all the questions you want to ask are asking people to give examples of when have they handled the worst case scenarios of the job you have. Like Britt, you have that example of when you went out of your way to courier, hand deliver products to that house and they gave you the wrong number and it was like an hour the other direction. So tell that story and be like, what would you do in that example? And then you can add on like, and you're supposed to be at the next appointment, like you had appointments back to back. This happened, you're supposed to go to school. What do you do? Right? Like give them
Called you crying.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's okay. If they called you crying, that would be all right too, right? You could help them through it. But so
That was a dark time. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, but give examples of the worst case scenarios that you've really dealt with either at your current company or in past lives and ask them how they would handle that. I was just helping a client interview people they want to fill like a junior operations integrator role. And so the questions I asked in my head, I'm like, okay, what are the core things that this person has to do and has to manage? And like, what fires do they have to put out? I care about those things. I don't care about the fluffy stuff when I'm in an interview process. Like that would be the bonus questions I ask. But I ask things like, I literally said, this is a startup, things change all the time. Like if you're not good at handling chaos, this job is not for you. Give me an example of like the most chaos you've ever handled at once. Things like that, right? So what's weird about scaring people about a job is when you scare them, they want it more because there's this ego thing that triggers of like, oh, you don't think I can handle it? Anyone else ever respond to an interview that way? Yeah. So if we say we want our clones, we have to interview to find our clones. What do we say yes to? What intrigues us in an interview process? If you want more of you, ask questions that would get you excited about a role. I am someone totally motivated by being told no, or like that probably won't happen. Because then I'm like, oh, you think so? We're going to make it happen, right? Telling
About
people
more junior roles though, so like we're hiring for our production, which is like a little bit monotonous, but like you have to be really detail oriented, you have to move quick, and you have to have good communication and like all those things.
Yeah, and again, so this speaks to hiring to replace you in every role, even if they're not going to ever do the work you're doing. If they're a junior level person, you still expect them to show up the same way you do, right? So if you expect people to be flexible, if you expect people to know that while we might have fixed hours, things happen all the time out of our control. we have to be flexible and know that sometimes we'll work late. Sometimes we'll have a 5-minute lunch or be eating while we're typing, or sometimes I'm going to need you coming on Saturdays. Like you have so many examples right now, Kendra, between the storm that happened in Texas and the
It's like a quadruple hit.
yeah, the storm, the fundraiser, and now your sales are off the hook, which I don't think it's all, because of each other. So you have lots of examples of being like, the only people we want on our team are ones that are willing to go above and beyond. And by working here, here's what you're going to get. We forget to tell people the intrinsic value people get by being on our teams. So ask them questions to give examples of how they've survived your worst case scenarios. Ask them to tell you examples. So telling you examples is always critical in the interview process because it lets them tell a story that versus just being like, oh yes, I'm detail oriented. You might say that, but until I have an example, I don't know if your detail oriented is like my detail oriented, and that will allow me to ask more questions.
Yeah, we actually asked that in our interview last week, and someone's example of detail oriented was like not the definition of detail. I was like, what dictionary are you using?
Yeah.
I was like, okay, that's not good.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm also, and I know we're running out of time, but like maybe this is for another time, on critical feedback. I feel like what you were saying, I've had the scariest jobs in fashion, and I am like hyper aware of the way I was treated. And so I'm trying to be hyper aware of not being that way to like the junior people on my team. But obviously like what we're doing, it moves super fast. There's a crap ton of moving parts and every move counts because we're so small. So when things are done wrong, like I either just will course correct it really quickly because I'm just like, I don't have time to explain this to you, or I'll explain it, but I'm potentially too fluffy with it because I don't want to be the hated boss the way I hated some of my bosses. But then I end up in the same position where like that mistake keeps being made and we get no further. And so I need to figure out a way to like either potentially be a bit stronger, like in the everyday things that go wrong, or like if they keep going wrong, like schedule a sit down and being like, okay, how can we sort this out? Like I don't think I've been doing a great job of that.
There's a book, Radical Candor.
Yes.
What's it called?
Radical Candor. I bought a copy for everyone on my team.
Okay.
No one will read it.
Lauren, I'll read it with you.
Okay.
I ordered it
Let me type this.
too.
There's a link in
I've
the
only read a few
in the
pages of
library.
it.
No one's reading it after about a year because everyone's so busy. No one wants to read at home, of course. So I'm now scheduling 30-minute times for everyone to read it, and it's required as if we are in school.
Amazing. Okay.
Well, yeah, because communication is being missed, like you're saying, like we're giving feedback and they're like leaving, like, and like, no, we're like telling you this because like we're committed to your success, and like me giving you feedback because I want you to be successful, and this is what it looks like. So I think it's important to have them read it too and to know where the communication is coming from.
Okay.
And this
Not
also,
just like
Right.
bad and wrong.
this also goes back to the steps of an interview.
Yeah.
Right? Because what do we want to achieve in an interview strategically? We want them to know the good and the bad of the job. We want them to be able to tell us they can do the good and the bad of the job. We want to know how they work on a daily basis. Like how do they operate? What are they really like? What's their routine, schedule, expectations? And then we need to tell them how we operate.
Yeah.
So in the interview process, you should tell people, because we should be choosing equally. It should, in an interview, they should choose us, we should choose them, and be excited about it. And so in that interview process, telling people exactly what you said, Lauren, right? Like we move really quickly. Like I'm not going to be able to give you feedback in a soft touch way. Sometimes it's going to be very direct, not because I don't like you, not because, it's a you thing, it's a workability of like what happened. And so you have to be willing to be coachable. You have to be willing to like take my direct feedback, be like, okay, got it, execute, come back, so we can all keep running together. So let people know that's going to happen so that when it does happen, you've told them before, and then you have that space to say, hey, remember when I talked about that direct feedback? Here's my direct feedback. This is an example. And you just have permission to go because you prep them for it. The other core thing, and we spoke about it briefly in the workshop, if you guys had the chance to go back and watch it, is being the coach. So if you tell people, like as CEO, one of my jobs is to coach everybody on my team so we all win together. coaching means lots of constructive feedback. It does not, I'm going to tell you when you are awesome and give you a high five. I'm also going to tell you when you need to change your shoulders to shoot differently. And I'm only telling you that not because it's a me thing. I'm telling you that because it's a winning thing. And so again, that's another like key construct to create with your team. So part of this is in radical candor, right? And how you build relationships, but setting the precedence that being on your team means that just like you feel like you're going to MBA university right now or startup university, Lauren, they should be going to Dora Maar University, everyone who's there. One of the best things about working at Puma was that nobody had fun. Nobody was part of like the group until you proved that you could get your shit done. It was intimidating, but it was very effective. And it wasn't like a said thing. It was just part of the culture. Like all the people who'd worked their ass off, who you wanted to hang out with, they like barely talked to you until they knew that you could hang. And to me, it's once you prove that we can work together and I respect you, then we can be friends. That's my approach in a workplace setting. And the truth is that's my whole approach to relationships, right? Because it's true, right? Like, for all of us who are hustling all the time, if you don't respect somebody else's hustle, it's really hard to respect other things that they do. Yeah. But again, that's a me knowing me thing. So
that actually helped us weed, I'm like interviewing, so I think I have all these things I'm pulling from, but that helped us weed someone out last week too. We're like, how's your communication? Like we give direct feedback. Like, how do you feel about that? And she's like, I hate negative feedback. And I was like, okay, I just don't think you're fit. She's like, yeah, I don't do well at that. I'm like, okay.
But I feel like I know we're running out of time, but I feel like honestly the kids in college right now are like getting a different narrative about what workplace culture is supposed to be. And Mikkel, you probably like, since you're with students, like I feel that maybe it's like TikTok too, like the narrative that they're getting spun about like communication in the workplace and hierarchies and that sort of thing is like not the same.
Well, it's interesting because there's so many things that we just took, and we just kind of felt it was our rite of passage.
Yeah.
When we all knew people shouldn't have been doing that, and so you have this generation who's coming in that's like, nah, we're not taking it. But you also have a whole generation of people that are getting like 4th, 5th, 6th place trophies. So it's like, how do you balance, telling them, nah, you shouldn't take that, but also, nobody's going to give you a cookie for not doing anything, like you still have to bring something. Mm-hmm. So I kind of try and tell people that, that they do have options, but at the same time, you can't come into a workplace thinking that, you're supposed to be the design director. Like You're coming in as an assistant, you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's the attitude I'm getting a lot. And I'm like, this is not, no, like there's still like hang with the cool kids. You have to prove that like you can put the work forward. And like Britt said, like, it doesn't matter where you're at, or Kendra too, like we're still like schlepping and sending boxes and all this stuff. And we're like 10 plus years into our careers.
And I think some of the problem is that, in speaking to fashion, some of the problem was that for a time, and it's probably still happening, people who were like 20 something were getting hired and getting these titles, from these companies that didn't really want to pay them, but will offer them a title of, senior designer. And they just wanted somebody cheap to come into that position. They didn't want to pay them. And so now you got somebody who's coming, who's coming out of school, who's got this title, and then they move to a job where they don't know what's going on, but they're expecting to be able to run things. And, then they got to get knocked back down to size, so it's kind of difficult. And I don't think that there's enough people who are, we are, but I don't think that there's enough people who are kind of saying, this is really what you need to do. And no, you shouldn't take, excessive abuse, but you also need to work hard to get where you want to go. Like it's not just some walk in the park.
Right.
There's a restaurant around here that's known for its customer service, and it has a rigorous training program where like no shit is taken, right? But because there's no shit taken inside, there's exceptional experience and success outside. So it's all about this line of integrity, right? Because integrity is threefold, right? Of doing what you say you're going to do, when you'd say you do it, whether you were asked to do it or not. And that's all about expectations. And obviously, many of us have been in situations where there's been things that are probably illegal, right? Of not being paid correctly, sexual harassment, like list all the things, right, that we've all experienced or seen or been exposed to throughout our career path. There's nothing in that space of running a tight ship that makes it illegal or dangerous for somebody, right? So again, it's like the scale of shifting, like work is hard, like the end. Like we do not work because like this is not vacation. And we work hard because it builds our confidence, it gives us these skills, we get paid for it, we're developing. Like diamonds are made under pressure. So if you want to have a company that's making diamonds for your customers and for the people inside of it, they have to know that pressure is going to come with it. Like this is if I look at my business, like everyone on my team should be in the human optimization game with me, right? So that means that we're going to go through phases that feel uncomfortable. My team may not like me sometimes. But like I have to think about them, the customer, myself, the business, like all commitments need to be carried. And sometimes they have to be prioritized if something comes up. So just really telling people that this is my business philosophy, this is how this company works, this is who I want to have on my team, and allowing people to rise to the occasion versus always feeling like we have to pull them up. Like it's pulling people up is there's a missing in the leadership if that's what we're doing. And usually it's because we're not being enough of a hard ass. We're not talking about how hard this job really is. We're not talking about what the expectations really are. Like LeBron James is an ideal employee because no one needs to tell him to work harder, right? People have to tell him to remember to take care of himself. So who are the people that when you're looking for somebody, who's that person that's going to go above and beyond? Who's that person that's going to bring you a coffee? Like who's the person that really is like, I want to play this game with you. I don't want it to be easy. I want to do this work. I want to contribute. And that changes everything. I think about when I worked in manufacturing and offering a guy a $40,000 a year job, and he cried because no one's ever given him a salary. No one ever gave him health insurance, like all these things. So sometimes if Kendra, in your role in particular, if you think that a 40 or a 50-year-old man may not fit into your culture potentially, but maybe they would because they would completely whip into shape that production group, right?
Yeah, keep interviewing a lot of moms. We have someone, Nancy's coming in an hour.
Yeah.
Her email is also Fancy Nancy, which just makes me really happy. So yeah, we've been interviewing a lot of moms, which could be great for a production role because they're like their kids are at school and they're not like trying to climb to the CEO ladder. Like they're like, I don't mean that in a negative way by any means. I just mean like it's more of like a good fit for them.
Yeah, they're responsible. They know how to work hard. They're going to be in, out, and they're happy. Yeah. And another indicator for me about people I've hired, I know that I want people on my team to be a little bit intimidated, not because I'm a jerk, but because they get the pressure I'm putting on myself. They get how hard I'm working. They get my expectations, and I want them to want to make me happy. It's like the best teams end up being that way. And some of these people who've been on my team like that, like I adore them. We are close friends now. We'll work on anything together because we mutually feel that way. I don't want to let them down. They don't want to let me down. That's what I want. That's like the ride or die type of employee. It's a collaboration at that point. even if the rules say I'm a CEO and you're not, like, we're in this. And it maybe intimidation is the wrong word, but there's this level of like respect that usually people use the word intimidated to explain of like, I'm in this more than the job. Like, I'm in it because of this value I'm getting that's beyond my paycheck, and like wanting to support you and vice versa. And so who are those people that want to hustle as hard as you do? Find those people. And I know that they exist for every type of role that you're looking for. But that also starts with knowing the value of the role you're offering and the opportunity you're offering. Just like you pitch it to a customer, you got to pitch people about how working for you is the best job they're ever going to have. Even if they're sweeping the floors, it's going to be the best job they've ever had. So, questions, thoughts? Lauren, are you feeling like you have some?
I feel like I'm thinking a lot.
I can see you in ponder mode, and I can't tell.
Yeah,
I'm thinking, like,
I'm honestly thinking about this one girl on the team who's been for a few weeks. I'm just like kind of struggling with her. She's a Gen Zer, obviously. This is why I keep asking Gen Z questions.
Lauren, I feel like, well, first off, what most of the people in this group might not know is that at one point in my life, 7 years ago, Lauren was my boss when I was an intern.
I love that.
So full circle, like, I wouldn't be in my career today if it weren't for Lauren taking me on at Gucci. Like, I don't know how this all would have ended up the way it did, but like Lauren as an employer for me at one point, I like, it's really interesting because you were like the nice boss and Sogol was like
Harder.
scared the shit out of me. Like, one time I came into her office and she gave me instruction, and I repeated everything back to her, and she said, never come in my office again without a paper and pen in your hand, because I'm giving you all the information that you need. And it was so like intense. And it was like, Lauren was so nice. Lauren would never talk to me that way. Also, she was like my sister's best friend and, you know, whatever, but like,
I still can't
Sogol,
talk to people that way. Like, I still can
Yeah.
never see myself saying that. Even in my head, I'm like, why the hell do they not have a pen and paper? I
right.
cannot get myself.
Oh,
to
it took
say
me
that.
6 months to say that, but I did last week finally. I was like, it really bothers me that you don't have a pen and paper. How are you gonna remember this
Okay,
shit?
so it comes.
No, and
So,
that's an example of things I tell people all the time.
yeah.
Paul might not have been
But-
as scary as that girl, but I'm like, where's your pen and paper? Like, come
But
back.
it was literally
Like 10
like,
tasks later.
it was 7 years ago. And I remember it's something that was so impactful for me because it was something that now I tell my girls on their first day. I say, anytime I'm giving you instruction, I need you to be writing it down because I'm not going to repeat it again. And there's a way to say it without the other side of the spectrum where Sogol was like, honestly, like a bitch about it. It was like, never come into my presence without a pen and paper.
Mhm.
It worked. Her tactic worked, but there's a nicer way to do it. And I guess, Lauren, and I know we all struggle with this, is that I had to go through that like awkward, like I was like offended, you know, I'd never been talked to really like that before. It was so intense because my intention was to get the job done right. And I guess what's hard when we have interns is that they don't realize that we've gone through all those steps before
I know.
we've given that like feedback. I'm like, you're lucky that I'm telling you this now instead of you coming in here and I'm gonna be a bitch about it because I don't.
Yeah.
So I'm sometimes I think I can be too confrontational. I'm like either too nice or I'm too confrontational, but I feel like it's important for you to hear, Lauren, from me, considering you were once in charge of me. Like, I still learned so much, and there's still like, you know, I knew I was lucky to have you as someone telling me what to do because I knew you were so nice. But I think it's just finding that like perfect balance of, I can be nice, but also write down your expectations, and on your first day with any new employee, state what those are before you have to be thinking about every time they're, you know, late or they're not writing something down. You're not like, it really bothers me that they do this, because that energy is taking away from what you should be doing.
Totally,
you know.
100%. And that's why I'm like getting frustrated. I'm like, why can I just need to be a bit more harsh? Maybe not harsh, but just like
Honestly.
direct.
It's just it's confrontation, and I know
Yeah.
it's not something you like, but it's a part of stepping in your role as CEO. It's
Totally.
just like, and once and I think I'll read Radical Candor with you, because that's something I need to read that book. I have it. Let me know when you have it. We can have a little book club.
Yeah.
I think if you come at it as you're talking, you're going to confront them and it's confrontation. It's this weird thing and it's going to come off as negative. But if you say, hey, I really want you to be successful and make sure you get all the takeaways, can you make sure you have a pen and paper?
Yeah.
Then you can like
Yeah.
be giving them direct feedback without having it be like this negative thing. 'Cause
Yeah.
if you well, like, I'm going to be the asshole or I'm going to be the confrontation. Sometimes you have to confront someone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think you take on a different perspective of the communication. It could help.
Yeah, and between now and Thursday or next Monday, whenever we see you next, long to know that you have a conflict with the accelerator on our Thursday calls, but there's two things that I want you guys to see as triggers. Stop saying it's okay, because we never mean it when we say it. Never mean it.
True.
So stop saying it's okay.
Yeah.
And if you feel yourself about to say it, or you just said it, like Kendra corrected herself in that interview the other day, if you're like, it's okay, you're like, hold on, actually, it's not okay. This totally irritates me. Please go get your pen and paper. Like and all you have to change to be asshole to understanding or is tone. Right? You can smile and say the same thing and people will respond to it differently, right? So pause and like, if you say it or about to, just stop and be like, actually, what do I really want to say? Sometimes I have to say out loud, hold on, let me say what I really am thinking. Like I'll literally say it to somebody. So stop saying it's okay. And the other part is when you feel yourself about like you're thinking something and your words and thoughts are different, that's another red flag of like, hold on, why am I not just telling you what I think? And part of this whole thing, right, is about what is our commitment. So we keep telling people what we're committed to. I'm committed to you being my favorite employee. I'm committed to you growing. I'm committed to my business being awesome. I'm committed to me having my best dream company CEO life. I have to talk to you about this because this is preventing me from fulfilling one of those commitments, if not all of them. And so that's where that coaching element comes in. Keep talking about the commitments, but just, it's impossible. If your heart is in the right place, even if you are practicing this and you say it aggressively, you can always go back and say, hey, the words I said were correct. I do want you to have your pen and paper, and the tone I used was maybe a little rough because I'm just starting to say what I'm really thinking and I'm working on it. So you can always go back and tell people that, right? I'd rather you be radically honest with people than not, because every time we're not honest, it like puts something here and then it builds up and then it builds up and then it builds up. And that's when we scream because we're like, where's your fucking pen and paper? Right.
Yeah.
And they're like, what do you mean? You've never told me. And I'm like, well, I've been telling you in my head for like 2 years now. And I finally like can't take it anymore. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be my approach. So I will give you guys a list of some questions that I ask all the time. I will give that framework of like the core phases to go through in an interview process. And I do have a worksheet coming about how to manage things in the middle. I'll put this book in the library. This is a great book because you can look up what you want to say, and it has a scale from like mean to like.
Oh my God.
I need that.
We need a fashion version of that book.
Yes. Yes.
I'm gonna call the author.
Yeah, I just happened to pick up the section when an employee lacks basic hygiene. What do you think?
Oh
my gosh, that's happened.
Subtle?
It's
Oh, you
happened. Totally
had that?
happened before.
Oh yeah, this girl used to work out, like intense workout. It was bad before work.
Oh, I haven't had
Dealing
that.
with gossips, dealing with complainers.
I've had bad BO before, not me, but someone I've worked with. And then on set, I'm like, I don't want them around the client. It's really awkward. I
Okay,
never
just
figured out a way to
ordered it on
say it.
Amazon. Thank you.
A small gift is left at your desk. Yes. But so just quickly, last thing, right? Because you mentioned something that's really important there, Britt. You know that getting to be in the presence of your clients and be on set is a reward for the people on the team. So
Yeah.
you can use it to your advantage, right? If people want to work with, if they want to do the cool parts of the job, they have to prove they can handle the shitty parts. And sometimes they can't work with a client until you're like, listen, you can not wear deodorant when you want, but if you want to be around clients, like you have to wear deodorant on those days. And I really prefer it if you wore them every time in my presence. Thank you. And like, that's it. It's just a new rule, like Brittany pen and
Yeah.
paper. So there's a level of like this, as Kendra mentioned, the significance we put on it, but be aware of what are the fun parts of your job or their job, and use it to your advantage to move them towards where you want them to go. And maybe in your, Lauren, it's like working with the muses or getting to do more creative work, whatever that is, like see what that is and give people like, here's the checklist, here's the requirements to get to do those cool things.
Yeah.
After you've schlepped everything I own, we'll talk about you getting to be on set. Thanks.
I feel like I needed to hear everything that was said today, because this is like a huge
Same.
theme in my life. And I'm like, I have so many ideas. Like now I'm like, I need to have a meeting with my team of like what's expected on set. Cause I was trained that you just get thrown into it. And then all these like F-ups happen on set. Like I'm dealing with stuff from last week, and it's purely because the set I was on was crazy. But I'm like, I clearly need to write down these expectations instead of just assuming that everyone's going to learn like I did, because honestly, it wasn't the most like beneficial way for me to learn. And so I'm so glad we talked about this, because now I'm like, okay, I have a slower week this week. That's going to be a workshop I'm going to do, and make sure that, you know, because I don't want to, yeah,
It's a perfect SOP, Britt. It really
Yeah.
is. Here's the list of here's a list of behavioral expectations on set. Here's a list of actual things I want you doing on set. You pick everything up, you hang everything up, you steaming all the time, you're out of the way, you stand in the corner. like being on set with in that scenario, there are a lot of rules. And
oh my God. And then most of them are unspoken too.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So I feel like I
like-
forget that like we're all natural leaders here. And so Britt, you were thrown onto set, but like you can like your path was to own your own business. So you kind of like picked up on thing and absorbed it. And I forget, and all of us are like that. And I forget that not everyone is just gonna like soak it in and be able to like adapt to the environment really quickly. Like I kind of expect that, okay, I did this, like I've made it super far. I've been like a valued asset on all my teams. Why can't you do the same? But it's like some people just like, we can't expect people, I guess, to always like work the way that we were able to. Because I do that.
Yeah. These checklists or SOPs, whether they're process-based or behavior-based, they matter so much because they're a cheat sheet to getting people to rise to where you want them to. If people can't follow a checklist, they got to go. That's an easy measurement. But it allows all the things that we wanted to say to be said and put on paper. And now it's black and white. So going back to that example of the coach, like the NBA, all the rules are black and white. You can read them in the book. And so these SOPs are giving people the rules of how your business works and your expectations. That's why they matter so much, and they help to accelerate onboarding and training and keeping a team happy. So you guys are awesome. Thank you for your extra time today. I have to get ready for my 9:30. I will see you all on Thursday, and I will put the manager's phrase book in our library. So, and I'll give you, those worksheets will be coming soon. We have others from the workshop as well that are coming. Awesome, guys.
Thank you so much.
Go be awesome.
Bye. Thank you.